The Politics and Medicine of Cannabis, a Multi-State Approach. We have a great panel. I'm going to introduce the moderator, who's a dear friend, not just a personal friend, but a friend of the Expo, has been with us for years. The CEO and co-founder of CannaCoverage, Nichelle Santos. Many of you know her and love her as much as we do at CWCBExpo and as much as I do. So Nichelle is an entrepreneur, business development executive in the insurance industry, practicing risk mitigation from the cannabis industry to healthcare, environmental health, and safety public policy. She's practiced as a safety engineer and risk manager in the chemical, pharmaceutical industry, protecting employees and the surrounding community through process safety management, behavior-based safety, hazardous waste remediation, and regulatory compliance. As the CEO of CannaCoverage, Nichelle now brings her insurance and regulatory expertise to the cannabis industry to create customized risk management consulting with insurance solutions designed to protect businesses from failure. Now, that is God's work in this industry. And I'm going to leave it to Nichelle to introduce the stellar panelists from here. Thank you, Nichelle. Take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here. And Christine, before you leave the room, I just want to congratulate you for 10 years of excellence in bringing the CWCB Expo together. Yes. And as Christine said, it's God's work. I also serve, in addition to CannaCoverage, I serve as the state co-director for minorities for medical marijuana, and I'm on the board of the Coalition of Medical Marijuana of New Jersey. We advocate for social equity, social justice, health equity, which is what this panel is all about, and creating really good policy. So we're really excited to have you all here today, and I'd like to introduce my esteemed guests. First, we have Tosin Ajayi. Tosin is the Senior Policy Research and Policy Analyst for Cannabis NYC. Next, we have Bill Caruso. He's a partner at Archer-Greiner, an esteemed cannabis attorney, who we call him the godfather of cannabis in New Jersey for really pushing legislation and good policy that led to the medical marijuana industry, the legalization of. Next, we have Nichelle Rutter-Friberg, who is Director of Government Relations of the National Cannabis Industry Association, otherwise known as the NCIA. And finally, Dr. Ken Weinberg, founder and CEO of Cannabis Doctors of New York. Welcome, Ken. So I'd like for each of my guests to provide a brief introduction and tell us an abbreviated version, of where the industry was when you started in your role and the transition to where we are now. And in the words of Drake, we started from the bottom, now we're here. Bill?
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you. My name is Bill Caruso. I'm a former policy guy. I worked in government. Started my career in 1997 driving around in the back of a car with a United States congressman going from event to event, talking about cannabis. Most of my interactions were, don't ask me about cannabis because I don't want to talk about cannabis because it was not a topic for us to talk about then. California just legalized medical. Fast forward, I had the ability to serve 2 assembly speakers in New Jersey. I helped to write the state's first medical law back in 2009. Believe it or not, Jersey started in 2009 and did nothing with the program. And it allowed it to just sit dormant and watch patients' lives continue to be tormented. So that motivated me. I got out of government. I joined this law firm. I'm a dirty lobbyist in New Jersey. That's what I do for the firm. I help get permits and bills passed. And I went to the firm and said, I want to help legalize marijuana. And they went, huh? And I worked with the ACLU, the NAACP, Doctors for Cannabis Regulation, Law Enforcement Action Partnership, and a variety of other groups. We all came, New Jersey Normal, came together and got it done. It took time, though, to get it done. And we passed the most successful ballot question ever in the history of New Jersey in 2020 during a pandemic. we went from polling in the 40s to polling in the high 60s through changing people's hearts and minds. And that's how it works. We did it from every level, and I'm really proud of it. We're still doing it. And I just saw out in the hallway out there, New Jersey Business Action Center in Jersey's really trying to be a model for the nation and providing that support. The CRC, the business side, the economic development side, all of it put together. I'm really proud of the work we've done there and really proud to be here with everybody here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And it was really you created the pathway with the medical marijuana industry to the adult use. So New Jersey's doing pretty well so far. So next we have Tosin.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tosin Ajayi. I am a first-generation Nigerian-American. I spent the first 11 years of my life growing up in Brooklyn, East New York, which is one of the communities most disproportionately impacted by cannabis prohibition. I then transitioned to living in the suburbs of Central Jersey. I spent a substantial amount of my life there. And that experience really shaped my perspective because I firsthand got to see the disparities that exist regarding opportunity based on one's zip code, based on income. I have been a staunch advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion in the cannabis industry, which led me to starting a CBD wellness company in 2018, Holistic Remedies, just to put some representation, Black representation in the industry. I also founded the first graduate student group at NYU, Policy, and that all led me to my current role as a senior policy and research analyst for Cannabis NYC, led by founding director Dashita Dawson. If anybody knows about Dashita, we could give her a quick round of applause. But Cannabis NYC is an interagency hub of city resources. We work intentionally to achieve our mission, which is a sustainable, thriving, and of course, equitable cannabis industry in New York. And, when I started my role, well, before I even get into that, I just wanted to also give a little bit of background that I spent a lot of my career in public health as well as in the cancer space as a development professional, so raising money for cancer research and patient care, so that perspective also lends to what I'm doing in the industry now. But when I started the role last September, it was just 1 month shy of the inaugural adult use application window for New York State, where we saw the first 5 license types open for application. So that was retail, micro business, processor, cultivation, as well as distribution. And since then, we have seen that window close and licenses are being issued. We'll speak more to that. It hasn't been without its challenges, but I'm here to stay the course and again, push forward to this mission of this truly sustainable, equitable, and thriving cannabis industry in New York. Thank you.
Dr. Weinberg.
Can you, good.
Yes.
So I want to thank everybody on the panel and thank you, Nichelle, for doing this. This is great. And Christine, actually, for the advocacy that she's been doing and the education she's been doing all these years. And so that really feels good to be on this panel. I started as an ER doc at Bellevue many years ago and actually started writing stories when I was there, which I'll bring in a minute. And I think at the time, as a ER doc, I mean, especially at Bellevue, the things that you see are extraordinary, and I think I wrote just to document them, but ultimately, I think it was really therapeutic for me. And so I was an ER doc for 32 years. When the law went into effect when the Compassionate Care Act went into effect in 2016, I started Cannabis Doctors of New York. So we were one of the first groups that started seeing patients. And to the point of what things were like then, it was a very exciting time. We really felt like we were on the frontier, and there was just a really nice camaraderie that I think evolved, and now we know we're in a very different situation. But one of the things that I think has been most important and that I've been trying to do is really advocacy and education. I go around the state talking to different groups, to legislators, to my colleagues. And actually, in the middle of all that, I wrote a book, and I submitted one of the chapters to Psychology Today. I now have a blog called Bedside Manners, and I do a lot of writing about medical cannabis on that blog, which is great because I think it's a really good way of getting the information out there. In fact, the last blog I wrote was titled, "Does THC Give You Wisdom?" And if anyone's interested, my colleague Bruce has some copies of it. Shameless self-promotion. But I think it's great stuff, and it really is nice to have a forum, a platform to be able to talk about this stuff.
Thank you, Dr. Weinberg. Michelle?
Thank you, Nichelle. Hi, everyone. Nichelle Rutter-Friberg. I am the Director of Government Relations for the National Cannabis Industry Association. You'll hear me refer to it as NCIA. And my background in this space, I have, like Bill, I am also a lobbyist. I'm based in Washington, D.C. I don't know if I'll say dirty lobbyist, Bill, but we'll just stick with lobbyist for now. But I have been involved in this space and worked for NCIA in a government relations capacity for just about 10 years now. I'm coming up on my 10-year anniversary. And I think that all of my colleagues on the stage here, and I'm sure as many of you know, a lot has changed in those 10 years, and I know that we're going to talk about that here shortly. But when I started in 2014, there were 2 states that had just begun adult use sales, Colorado and Washington. Fast forward to today, we have about, half the country now that is, legalized adult use cannabis programs. In addition to that, it's been an incredible journey. I feel like I personally have grown with this industry as well as we have matured. I feel so have I, at least I like to think so, in the last 10 years. But the reception on Capitol Hill and the change in it has really been remarkable to see and an incredible journey to witness. I sincerely remember when I first started and I would go into, various offices on Capitol Hill and, you'd say you were there to talk about cannabis or marijuana and you would get a little chuckle and ask, oh, do you have free samples? And not in the way that they really wanted free samples, in the way of a very disparaging way. Yeah. Again, fast forward to today, the conversation has shifted dramatically. That is the result of the hard work of people on the stage with me, the work of all of you, and a number of our other colleagues, patients, consumers, businesses that have really worked tirelessly to professionalize this industry. So I'm really happy to be here with you all today.
Thank you. And we can reverse the order. What are you most proud of from a policy perspective and where we are now and the greatest challenge you see for the industry?
I mean, as I alluded to a moment ago, the momentum that we have been able to create with this industry, and again, the dedication, again, to the businesses, to the consumers, to the patients, to the communities of which we are a part of, I think is incredible. I also, again, being that I'm in DC, am very, very proud, again, and you'll hear us all talk about it, you've already heard this word a number of times today, the advocacy that all of you have engaged in, and I hope continue to engage in, and if you haven't, that I hope that maybe this will be the start of that for you. NCIA, we just held our annual fly-in just about a month ago now, and that's every industry in Washington, D.C. does this, every association. Your members come in from all across the country. We set up meetings up for you. I see some people nodding. I know a number of people here have participated in that event in the past. And you go, we set you loose on Capitol Hill. I make a number of meetings for you, and you go and talk to legislators with other members of the cannabis industry. And seeing the excitement and again, the growth of that event and the things that we're talking about, like we said, we still have a lot to do and a very far way to go, certainly in terms of federal policy, right? I'm very excited about the momentum and the headway that we've made, and I think getting into the second part of your question, what are the challenges? But number one, I mean, we haven't, unfortunately, yet accomplished what we've set out to do in Washington, D.C. And so I think to that end, that is also one of our biggest challenges is, number one, fatigue. It is difficult. I understand it. I live it every day, 10 years of a political process that can sometimes be cumbersome and difficult and takes a lot of time. I know that's something that Bill alluded to as well earlier. But I think that challenge of keeping people engaged and ensuring that they stay active, because you do not want to be reactive in this space. I don't think in any space that's typically a good place to be in, but certainly in this one, I think that it is critical that we continue to be proactive, because what's the saying? If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So Thank you. Well, go lobby.
Bill, you want to jump in on that?
Oh, no, I thought we were going to go in order.
Okay, we can go down.
Sure. I think the most exciting thing, again, going back to when everything started and watching, we first had 10 conditions and then 11, 14, and finally when murder was passed, I think the OCM did the right thing and they understood that there really should be no restrictions. I certainly, as a physician, I am constantly amazed by the variety of conditions that are treated by my certifying patients for cannabis. So I think that was really a major step for them, that we can certify somebody for any condition that we deem appropriate. Having said that, and I wish that Ms. Davis had spoken more about this, but I think we all know just the medical program has fallen to the wayside. And I don't see anything that's really being done. I'd love to hear that they are doing something, but I think that's a huge issue. There's also an issue, there's a company called Leafwell that has been poaching patients. And I think, and the OCM has done nothing about that, despite being told about it. It's a whole other conversation, but it's very disturbing. I mean, our patient populations have fallen off tremendously. So it's a much longer conversation. And the last thing that I think is the most disturbing is patients being able to access cannabis. I have so many patients who have dropped out and are buying weed on the street again because they can't afford it. And I wish that there were ways, and I think the state should have ways, to really help people get back, because as was stated in the last conference, the last talk, we want people to be getting cannabis that is pure, that has no adulterants in it, that is exact, that's precise. I mean, as a physician, that is the issue to me. When I talk to patients, I can say to them, look, you're going to get, if it's 5 milligrams of THC, 5 of CBD, each time you take that pill or gummy or whatever, you're going to get that, and you're going to get that same effect. And I think that's really, really important as a physician to be able to share with my patients. So those are some of the things that are of concern to me.
Yeah, how we maintain the balance of the adult use market and the medical market is critically important. We want to increase patient access and affordability, and we'll get into some of that a little bit later. Tosi?
Yes, so I believe, again, the question is, what am I most proud of in terms of the policy perspective, right? So I would say I am very proud of New York for being the state that has passed the most progressive legalization bill in the country, in my opinion, has a state that's actually admitted to the wrongs that they have done through cannabis prohibition. So just a little bit of history and statistics, over the 40-year height of the war on drugs from 1980 to 2020, there were 1.3 million cannabis arrests in the state. Of that, 57% were of Black descent. 25% was people who identified as Hispanic or Latino. We have communities disproportionately impacted that, when we say 25% of the state actually accounted for 75% of the arrests. So we've actually been able to call that out in New York and create policy to directly address those issues. We see the things that I'm most proud of are obviously the social and economic equity provisions that are built into the MRTA. I was one of the advocates for the MRTA passing. So we now have a framework where people who identify from communities disproportionately impacted, people who are minority background, if you are a service-disabled veteran, if you are a woman, if you are a distressed farmer, you qualify for reduced licensing fees and application fees. And there's also a statewide goal of awarding at least 50% of licenses to those populations. In addition to that, there is provisions built into the law for community reinvestment. So of the 13% retail sales tax, 40% of that goes directly into communities disproportionately impacted. And this is the first year where the grant fund is actually going to be taken off the ground. I'm very proud of that. There's going to be $5 million that is going to be awarded through grants, specifically to communities disproportionately impacted, and we can only expect that number to continue to grow as the market grows. So those are some of the things I am really proud of that New York has been able to do, and because it's not being done anywhere. And in a climate where we are seeing race-based policies, gender equality challenged at the federal level, the Supreme Court level. You know, we've seen affirmative action shot down last year. We've seen Roe versus Wade reversed. I mean, come on, like, are we in 2023? So,
no.
You know.
24.
24, wow, yeah. 2024, even an additional year, right? So, and we're reversing things that are basic. So for New York to have been able to do that is a really, really big accomplishment that I am proud of. And, you know, I'm trying to be here to continue to push regulation in that direction because it's much needed. We have not erased the harms completely. And unfortunately, a lot of the equity conversation is beginning to become co-opted to support other groups who are speaking up as the most impacted when we know what the statistics show. So those are some of the things I'm most proud of about policy that's been passed in New York.
Thank you, Tosi. And just if we could give a round of applause to Cannabis NYC, doing really important work in balancing social justice, social equity in the programs and giving back to the community. Thank you. Bill?
I'm proud of this, and I'll explain that. We're having a conversation about cannabis as policy. I mean, I started my career here. We didn't talk about that. I mean, we got laughed at. You're absolutely right, and it wasn't a conversation. I'm an attorney with ethics rules, and I wasn't allowed to practice. I wasn't allowed to help clients unless it was a criminal client that got arrested, and then I could take their money to defend them in a court of law. But to talk about how to get a medical patient access to cannabis, I wasn't allowed to do that work. I was prevented or to have my law license taken away from me. Now there's tons of cannabis lawyers all over the place. This is good. This room here is fantastic because it's a merging of so many different interests and talents and people from all different walks of life. That trade show floor, that didn't exist 10 years ago in reality. It wasn't these types of companies, these diverse companies that were coming to the table. And the thing I want to lift up something that Tosi said, we may argue a little bit about which East Coast state got it right, but it's an East Coast state that got it right. But we got it right because we lifted up racial and social justice, social equity. We're creating something that didn't exist. And while the federal government's doing their best to screw this up because they can't agree that today's Thursday down there, they're taking an approach that I think is right. It's a right approach to go slow, to not overtake this industry and allow the Ammonization or Walmartization of cannabis, whether that's on the medical side with Big Pharma coming in and taking it over, or on the commercial adult use side. We are seeing the birth or rebirth of small, diverse, homegrown companies that exist in their states and that are allowed to flourish and to thrive. And we're seeing partnerships with governments now at the local level and the state level investing. That's why I called out our friends in New Jersey, the New Jersey Business Action Center, a government group that's coming in and providing expertise to businesses that can't afford me, to be perfectly honest with you. There's money that's going to be developed now that's going to be going out to both help the community but also to help these businesses. This did not exist. This was fever dreams at one point. These are realities now. That said, where are we going? I don't know. And I worry about that. And God save the lobbyists, I will now say a positive thing, because I think there is a role for advocacy, formalized advocacy. But changing the hearts and minds matters. And every single one of you in this room are having conversations. And I'm going to end this conversation with this. Cannabis is still medicine no matter where you get it. It doesn't matter if you're in the adult use line or you've got a magic card or you don't have a magic card because you also have a firearm and you don't want to violate those laws. We're all screwed up and we need to fix it. But the stigma is changing.
You see that when you go in the halls. You see that in your profession right now, doctor. You love that, right? That your colleagues are coming online. Tosi, you're seeing this in the conversations you're having now in the social equity field. And I see this in the most important place in my world. My mom. She's 76 years old. This was not a topic that she ever wanted her son to be involved in, talking about out loud, quoted in newspapers, or serving on a panel on. And my mom is cool with this. And my mom is now coming around to understanding the medical benefits. But she doesn't have the help and support of her medical professionals who she trusts. And that's where we need to go next. We need to merge this all together, and our federal government needs to get their heads out of the rear end and get it together and get it done.
Preach, Bill, preach. And you're absolutely right. Plant-based medicine belongs in healthcare.
Amen.
Which leads me to Dr. Weinberg. I have a two-part question. As the adult use market gains momentum, despite the medical marijuana market having a 10-year head start, only 25% of doctors can properly recommend terpenes and strains for specific conditions and illnesses. How can the medical cannabis industry look to achieve the balancing act of the medical market versus the adult use market?
I mean, I think it's really about education and advocacy and hearts and minds. And I will talk about this later, I hope, but there is actually a group that I'm working with that, I mean, cannabis it's a plant-based medicine. Everybody has a different endocannabinoid system. Everybody metabolizes it differently. I know from all the patient encounters I've had, some people will find the sweet spot in a day or a week. Some people it takes 6 months. And so we need as much science to really help us with that, and I will talk about something later, but there's a company, Canformatics, that is doing salivary biomarkers, and that is incredible, and I think it is really the wave of the future, so that doctors can really be told, okay, this patient has X, Y, or Z condition, this is what they should be getting, and I think that's the way things are going to go.
Yes, absolutely. We're looking forward to bringing precision medicine. I heard someone say out there.
Nichelle, can I just add one thing?
Yes.
You know, one important component of this that doesn't exist yet, we're seeing little bits and bites of it right now, but we talked about affordability, and so the expertise is going to be there, and the understanding, and the doctor's ability to prescribe, but our ability to pay for this. And the government's ability to pay and reimburse. And I think we're going to get in a little deeper that, but we haven't talked about the payer side of this. And it's not just your pocket, because that's where it is right now. We're seeing a little bit going on in the workers' comp space, which is fantastic. But you know, let's take the power of the insurance lobby and put it to good use. This is cheaper medicine. This is easier for folks to deal with. They'll want to get involved with this, but Medicaid, Medicare, VA, and private pay aren't in the game yet. And so insurance, and this is some weird topics, right? We're saying hooray for the insurance companies, right?
I love the topic of
I
insurance.
know.
I love it.
I know.
Someone say insurance?
But I am excited about, again, our curiosity coming at the federal level, because when the payer mix starts to get in the game here, that's going to open up the door. And doctor, it's going to help your colleagues be able to afford the time with the patient. It's going to be able to allow you to be reimbursed for the time you're working on, but also allow them to afford their medicine too.
Well, I just have to say something that I don't think most people know. 10% of medical schools teach about the endocannabinoid system.
That's crazy.
So that's a huge issue that really needs to be addressed, because that's really one of the things that's holding us back so much. To your point, Nichelle, about why don't they know about terpenes or cannabinoids? They're not learning about it. They don't know how important the endocannabinoid system is. So, I mean, it's a whole other conversation, but I think it's really critical. And I wish, I've actually worked with Senator Gillibrand, trying to get education, trying to get this into the medical schools, because that's what we need. And I wish New York State would do something about it. They haven't. So.
Well, we believe that the path for rescheduling, the reclassification of cannabis from Schedule I to Schedule III will help to alleviate the stigma, right? We can start to educate the public more we can start to have public service announcements, because the government really didn't do a good job with the medical
The government
marijuana.
didn't do a good job?
And educating people, what is the medical marijuana industry? What is the adult use industry? So why is it up to just us? But if it's up to just us, then we're doing a pretty good job, but there's millions, there's 300 million people out there in the US that need to really understand what this industry brings, the benefit of plant-based medicine, cannabis, as well as psychedelics. So we absolutely look forward to the day when we're having conversations with carriers, and it's already happening. So our medical carriers are, when you look at your health ID card, you have medical, prescription, dental, vision. I look forward to the day when there's medical cannabis and psychedelics, right? Ketamine-assisted therapy, CAT, remember that. Ketamine-assisted therapy. We released a press release yesterday that we're working, CannaCoverage is working with FIM, Gaetano, raise your hand, and Thea, right, to bring CAT to healthcare, and we can scale it through your employee health benefits, employer-sponsored plans. So the day is coming, so we're really excited, and I know, Dr. Weinberg, you're looking to work with some of the medical schools to bring education, cannabis education, because that's the way to scale access to the doctors.
Yes, and if I can just say, I don't know if anybody knows, but this cannabis was part of the U.S. Pharmacopoeia. It was an acknowledged substance from 1850 to 1937. And then it became demonized. And all of a sudden, instead of it being called cannabis, it was called marijuana. I wonder why that happened. And that was when the film Reefer Madness came out. And people still talk about killer weed. I mean, Reefer Madness was one of the greatest propaganda films of all time. And we're still living with that. So I just feel like I have to say that. I mean, it was acknowledged, accepted medicine, not just in this country, but around the world for 5,000 years. So.
Well, that's a good segue. When cannabis was outlawed, prohibition didn't just happen to consumers. Prohibition also happened to the pharmaceutical industry that had several prescription drugs that included cannabis as an ingredient. And as a result, they had to make more synthetic drugs. Nichelle, how do you believe the reclassification of cannabis from Schedule I to Schedule III will impact the market? And do you believe there can be an existence of all markets, adult use, medical, and the pharmaceutical industry?
Well, I think that there is a lot at play here, and I want to make sure. I think language matters all the time. I think it certainly does when we're talking about cannabis policy. So I want to be clear. Number one, the reclassification or the rescheduling of marijuana is not a given right now. It is not done. It is an ongoing process, and there are absolutely no guarantees that that is what's going to happen. I'm not going, everyone likes to ask, well, what do you think is gonna happen, Nichelle? And I'm always happy to look into my crystal ball a little bit, but I wanna be really clear that nobody knows what is going to happen in terms of whether or not rescheduling is going to happen or not. I also wanna be clear that there's a big difference between rescheduling and descheduling, right? So rescheduling is moving it within the Controlled Substances Act, a la moving it from Schedule I, where it currently is, to Schedule III. Descheduling means that you would remove it from the Controlled Substances Act entirely, right, and treat it more akin to alcohol or tobacco. So exactly, and amen. And our association, NCIA, we believe that rescheduling can be a positive step in the right direction, but that is all that it is. It is a step. It's going to significantly help the small businesses that I represent. My association represents hundreds of businesses nationwide. Pretty much all of them are small businesses. And with a move from Schedule I to Schedule III, if that's what happens, and I could talk about that for a whole hour, so find me after this if this is your passion. But you know, if it moves into Schedule III, Section 280E, a very punitive part of the tax code that impacts essentially it really just impacts cannabis businesses at this point, but it says if you are dealing with a Schedule 1 or a Schedule 2 substance, you can't make any standard business deductions off your federal taxes. It has, and again, I've seen this over 10 years, it has absolutely decimated the industry in a lot of ways. It has made people unable to continue operating. It has encouraged consolidation, and again, who can sustain that? Investment capital, large companies. Again, small businesses, women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses. 280E is the difference between keeping your doors open and not. So I just want to be clear that there's a lot of things we can talk about with Schedule 3, and that's one of the biggest pros. I also think, again, in terms of the stigma within with the plant itself and within this industry, that a move to Schedule 3 could help that. But I also want to be really clear that a move to Schedule 3 does not make any of your businesses legal federally. It doesn't matter if you're adult use. It doesn't matter if you're a medical marijuana business. Your business will still be federally legal. So I want to be really clear about that, because some people think, well, oh, I'm a medical dispensary. When we move to Schedule 3, I'm legal now. No, you're not, unfortunately. There is currently a proposed rule, which is what we've been alluding to a lot, that is soliciting public comment on the reclassification of cannabis, on the rescheduling of cannabis to Schedule 3. Our association, I'm sure many others in this room, are working on our public comment very diligently to get that submitted. But again, I want to be really clear that that rescheduling does nothing for the harms of the war on drugs. It does nothing for people who are currently in prison. I'm very happy that President Biden has made it very clear that most recently in a video that he posted when the proposed rule came out, saying that no one should be in jail for marijuana. Yes, President Biden, I certainly agree, but rescheduling does not fix that. And it also does not fix issues that we have with immigration in cannabis, issues that we have around SNAP in cannabis, a number of things. And so, again, rescheduling step in the right direction, cannot be the last step. And I think that it is certainly all of our jobs, and absolutely mine, to make sure that we're very clear about that, not only to all of you here and are very honest, because I'm sure you guys have seen it everywhere, that this is going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, and it's going to be a game changer. It is the biggest potential policy change in federal cannabis reform in history since it became illegal. So again, I don't want to rain on anybody's parade, because it is incredible and historic, but it is only a first step. And so just to quickly answer the second part there, yes, I do believe that the medical and adult use markets and the pharmaceutical industry can coexist in a potential Schedule 3 world. But I think Bill kind of said this earlier, the devil's in the details, right? Nobody knows what the final rule from the Department of Justice / DEA is going to look like. And so there's still too many unknowns to really say. I think that something that I'm really talking to policymakers about is making sure that we have federal enforcement guidance, if this is what happens, to make sure that it's very clear how we are treating this, who we are, how we're going to look at this. Are we going to just look at medical and adult use as one? Are they separate tracks? And I'm sure Dr. Weinberg can maybe talk a little bit more about the pharmaceutical end of things, but a move to Schedule 3 certainly helps pharmaceutical companies, because it will open up the investigational new drug process, for instance, and that will allow them to begin doing research and development on creating more cannabis-derived drugs. Certainly not against that, but again, I'm not here to represent the pharmaceutical industry, so put it that way.
Thank you, Nichelle. Tosi or Bill, you want to jump in? We have about 5 minutes left and 6 more questions to go. So.
Get 2 lobbyists on stage, that's it.
Okay. Tosi, what is the best advice you can give to operators on how they can prepare for rescheduling in the pipeline?
Yeah, absolutely. I have several suggestions. One is to make sure that you stay plugged in. Cannabis NYC, we have several resources. We have the 5-Borough Coalition meeting, which I lead every other week. It is a community-centered, business-supported, and government-protected, democratized coalition where you can hear up-to-date things that are coming out of the industry, because things are always changing, and you need to be able to be plugged in to be able to stay ready, right? Another thing, emphasizing participating in public comment periods, both at the state level and, of course, at the federal level. So it's really important to make sure that your voice is heard. Regarding federal rescheduling, the public comment period closes July 22nd. So you can go to www.regulations.gov and submit your public comment. And same thing for the state. There are 2 open public comment periods right now, and it's really important to make sure that you are participating. Cannabis NYC, we host regulatory policy workshops so that you can actually hear from different cannabis industry leaders, as well as myself and Deshita, the founding director of Cannabis NYC, and be able to be informed about what type of comments you should be making and hearing different perspectives. I also want to encourage everyone to never stop learning. Come to conferences like this, read books, subscribe to blogs. I recommend, if you're in New York, definitely signing up for the Office of Cannabis Management's newsletter. You can get that by going to www.cannabis.ny.gov and sign up for the newsletter so that, again, you're updated and you know what's going on. I think also just getting the unfortunate and very true reality of business is that any business venture is risky, and you have to understand that and come to terms with it, so that you can remain nimble and know that there are situations where you have to pivot, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to work out for you. I would also say one of my personal mantras is just try your best, and trust the process. Everything happens for a reason. I'm also faith-led, so that definitely helps me in my journey as well. But yeah, you have to try your best and just make sure that you continue to show up. And again, with all of those steps that I have shared, that kind of creates an ecosystem for better chances of surviving this very complex and constantly ever-changing industry.
I want to just add something in, lift up something Tosi and Michelle said, and Dr. Yu as well. I mean, you said we don't have enough research. We don't have enough education going on in this space. We have an ability to fill some of these gaps. So we don't have to be afraid of big pharma and FDA jumping in and rescheduling.
No, they haven't done anything for hemp and CBD. So.
Right? And so let's take their money. Let's take their opportunities, and let's invest them in the companies that we built here in New York and New Jersey and other places that were lifted up with social equity and racial justice in mind. There's no reason why big pharma has to come in here and own this, particularly with the current operations we have. There are partnerships available with academia right now. It's a little scary about getting involved in this on the research side. There's partnerships involved in the healthcare space. Again, still scary for them. But with rescheduling coming, they're going to be looking for partners that have the cannabis experience. That's you folks that have a license for a manufacturing facility that's making edibles or whatever else. There's no reason why you can't have a line of metered dose inhalers or transdermal patches that are more medical-like products. Same thing on the dispensary side. There's actually innovative research already going on in places like Pennsylvania that have a clinical registrant license, partnerships with existing research facilities and retail dispensaries looking at opioid step-down treatments and other things. Revolutionary game changers in this industry that aren't going to be developed by big pharma. They're going to be developed with you here in your communities. That room out there, I walked around before I got here. Thank you, my friend Jeff, because I was late coming here, but I was so amazed looking at there's higher ed sitting in that room out there. Go introduce yourselves, talk to those folks, create those relationships now, because Tosi and others and people that have been in this game created a model to create cannabis in a way that looks like our communities here. And the states have lifted that up without federal interference. Let's own it. Let's continue building on it. Let's take the federal help we're getting and let's apply it now in the state model that we built here, each and every state, and let's reinvest and let's do that research and then let's flip that switch back to medical, but it's gonna look a lot like what we've built here already, and it will allow the wealth to continue in those spaces as well. That's a model that can work. That's a model that we've sneakily built here around our country. There's some missing ingredients that our feds are gonna help us with now, But it can tie all this together, I think, in the end.
Let's own it. I love that. Lead with courage, not with fear. Questions?
Yep, I had a question. I want to thank this august panel here. These are good folks and contributing to the conversation. My name is Jeff Booker. I'm the co-founder and COO of CannaCoverage over in Jersey. I want to ask of the panel, while we wait for the federal government and state legislatures to give enabling legislation to allow us to be able to properly reimburse for health insurance as it pertains to cannabis and that sort of thing, what are some of the things that we can do in the interim to increase access to medicine for the folks that need it, and also to bring relief to payers, as Bill was talking about, as it pertains to health care claim experience? We all know that if we have more plant-based medicine, that we will see not only an increase in the quality of care and the health outcomes, we will also see a reduction in healthcare claims, which is what the payers care about, the employers care about, right? So in the meantime, what are some tools, what are some things that we can do to help alleviate the financial and the health pain that's there for patients?
I wanted to quickly jump in and say one thing that hasn't come up is home cultivation of cannabis, right? So New York has legalized medical home cultivation and is on the brink of legalizing adult use home cultivation, because as Bill said earlier, when you're using the plant, whether it's in the medical field or medical industry or the adult use, the top 3 reasons why people use cannabis is anxiety, pain, and sleep. Nobody can tell you why you're using it. It's a medicine first. It's a plant first, right? So with home cultivation, you can have up to 5 pounds of cannabis in your home. You can have, a household could have up to 12 plants. 5 pounds. That's 5 pounds of cannabis in your home that you've grown. You can also
Not
have
in
up
New
to
Jersey.
12
Not in New
plants.
Jersey.
Not in New Jersey yet, but there is a lot of lobbying going on for that, and we need to amplify that conversation because, of course, that increases accessibility and access. And some other things that have come up. We need to increase the pipeline of medical practitioners in this industry because it's going to legitimize the industry. When there are more medical practitioners speaking about this, we are able to take things from outside of the industry and apply it to cannabis. I can envision patient assistance programs popping up because that's always a conversation of increasing health equity and access. We also need to increase the number of legal dispensaries in different neighborhoods. We need to push back against a lot of these municipalities opting out. Because again, if you don't have a legal dispensary in your neighborhood, then you don't have access to legal, tested weed, essentially, that you can trust. And that presents, while there's food deserts, we don't want to see cannabis deserts, right? You guys know what food deserts are from a public health perspective. We also don't want to see that happen in cannabis because it impacts health equity and access. So those are some of the things I wanted to raise up.
And that's the politics and medicine of cannabis. So we could go on for hours. This is really important conversations, but please give my guests a round of applause. Thank you so much for being here, everyone.
That was fabulous. Thank you so much to all the panelists.